Welcome to episode 17 of the Cows Report. I'm Will Reese, Cows Director, and in this episode, we lead off with the big interview where Ryan Bradley sits down with Tulane AD David Harris and James Madison AD Matt Roan for a wide-ranging conversation. They discuss their program's historic seasons, inclusion in the college football playoff, navigating head coaching searches, the realities facing Group of Five institutions, and how they view the future of college athletics from where they sit today. Then, in the lobby, we turn the conversation to hoops. Veteran basketball coach Dane Fischer leads the discussion with Deputy AD Jonathan Botros of Texas Tech and Deputy AD Josh Cowan of Mississippi State, focusing on basketball sports supervision, the current landscape of the game, and advice for the next generations of leaders in college athletics. Thanks for joining us on the Cows Report, where the conversations continue long after the event ends. Hey, this is Will. Just wanted to jump on quickly to wish all of our listeners and the entire Cows community a very happy new year and also hand out a few quick thank yous. First, huge thank you to everyone who's listened, followed, liked, shared, and supported the Cows Report throughout 2025. We continue to get really encouraging feedback from so many of you, and it means more than you know. I also want to say a big thank you to Ryan Bradley, who's continued to do a great job of leading the big interview each episode. He also brings great vision and energy to this project along the way. Also excited to thank and officially welcome our newest Cows Report team member, Laura Keep. She's been producing our recent episodes and will continue in that role throughout 2026. Of course, none of this works without our guests, hosts, and contributors from the past year. We're incredibly grateful for the insight, honesty, and leadership they've shared with all of our listeners. As we head into 2026, our organization's word of the year is encourage. That's what we hope to do with every administrator, coach, and leader we come in contact with, especially as we continue to navigate a time of uncertainty and change across college athletics. A couple things looking ahead. We're excited to be bringing Cows One Day to Atlanta and Georgia Tech on Thursday, June 4th. For more information, check out adsymposium.us and registration will be opening soon. And of course, Cows comes to Fort Worth, hosted by Mike Buddy and TCU, September 27th and 29th. So keep a lookout for information on our yearly Cows event. This will be number 16 for us. With that, we're going to send you to Ryan and the big interview.
It's time now for the big interview here on the Cows Report podcast. I'm Ryan Bradley, and I'm pleased to be joined this month by two ADs who have been very busy over the last several months. David Harris, the Director of Athletics at Tulane University, and Matt Roan, the Director of Athletics at James Madison University. Gentlemen, thanks for taking time to be with us this month.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ron, and thank you for having us.
Excited to dive in. Both of your programs recently reached the college football playoff as conference champions and automatic qualifiers. When you take a step back now, and maybe you haven't had much of an opportunity to do that yet, but if you take a moment to catch your breath, what did that moment and that achievement mean for both your programs, but also your campuses, your conferences, your peer institutions? What was the significance of reaching that milestone? David, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think for us, just a tremendous amount of pride for everyone associated with our program there. As you would expect, having accomplishments like that and moments like that, they start way before the moment, right? They even sometimes start before the year in which you celebrate it. So you think about the number of people who poured into your program over a period of time to give you a chance to be able to have that type of accomplishment. People who work in athletics, as well as people who work on your campus, your donors who support you. And so when you have that type of accomplishment, I think everybody walks a little bit taller, and it just makes them feel good that the work that's been done, the investments that have been made, have paid off in a significant way for the team, for the program. I think everybody enjoys seeing the name Tulane University on anything associated with the college football playoff, from watching the bracket reveal and all of the coverage, just how incredibly exciting it is to be able to be in that situation and have that type of notoriety for your entire university is just something that is a special thing. And so for us, I think really just enjoying and being in that moment and being able to show that the work that you put in and the investment that has been made can truly pay off in a significant way.
Pride was the first word that came to mind. So David, stealing that one from me, I had to come up with something else. But I think when you talk about pride, not for me, not for David, right? It's for the people that we serve. It's the student athlete, it's the coaches, it's our campus community, it's our alumni base. Legitimacy is where I go, right? It's having the three letters of JMU associated with the three letters of CFP. It justifies the investment that we make in athletics. It produces a positive return. To David's point, it makes people feel good about the direction, not just our football program is setting, our athletics department, our entire institution. But I think impact is there, right? It's how people feel or feel. There's a just kind of a quality there, but I think when you try to quantify the impact, I don't know that we'll know that for quite some time. It's not just in the early admissions period, right? People that watched us play in Eugene, Oregon against Oregon on December 20th, right? What does that do for applications this spring, next year? What does it do for alumni and donor participation and giving? I think, we'll just impact, we'll have that now, but I think it'll be felt for years to come as well.
We're still fairly early in this expanded 12-team college football playoff format. Your teams had to put together a contingency plan to be prepared to participate in the CFP, not knowing if your teams would win, but if the dominoes would fall your way. What did you learn about your own athletic departments in terms of infrastructure and readiness and alignment, and being prepared to operate under that level of a time crunch and in that kind of a spotlight on such short notice?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. So, you're comparing yourself against Tulane for really the last month of the season to only realize on a Saturday night of championship weekend that with the result in Charlotte, that it was probably likely to be both of us. And what I quickly came to realize, even more than I already knew, is the quality of the people inside of organization. One, with the planning and the preparation, but how quickly we were able to activate and execute. To go from the ACC championship ending at midnight Eastern, 12 hours later, we're finding out our destination, and everything was lined up from group meetings to breaking that down into different larger committee meetings and breaking that down into different groups. And mind you, this is on the heels of, and David had the same situation, right, of hosting a conference championship game. So the sprint never ended. But to be running in a lot of ways on fumes, but still at the same time be able to perform at such a high level, it just speaks to the quality of the people that we have inside of our organization. And I think how much they care, right? Because the game itself wasn't the end, right? You still have those lingering effects. And I know we're going to touch on it here in just a few moments, right? But you're offboarding one staff, onboarding another. So I don't know that it's stopped since that time for us. And we've been able to execute at a high level because of quality of people.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that sticks out for me is that as I'm running through those days and about the things that I feel like we need to do and where do we need to be, and beginning to have those conversations with my staff, they're already saying, yep, we're already one step ahead of you. We've already done this. We've already met on this twice. We've already decided we're going to go in this direction versus this. And if this were to happen, this is the contingency. And if this were to happen, this is what we recommend. And so just having people around you who do care and who take it very seriously and who are anticipating what the needs are going to be and who are trying to start as early as possible. And so while you're in a position that you supervise all of it and you're accountable for all of it, because you have good people, it doesn't mean that you have to be in the room every time something is being planned, every time someone is setting up how's the bus going to work or the plane going to work or dinner or this alumni function or where are we leaving from. And all of those decisions are being made by really good, really capable people who are working hard to make sure that our student athletes and our team have a great experience. So it really just confirms that you have the right people around you and makes you feel good that when the next challenge comes up, that your people will be ready to rise to that occasion as well.
Matt, you alluded to it just a moment ago. Both of you experienced the reality of success at this level in this moment in time. You win big. Your head coaches are being hired away before the postseason concludes, really before the postseason even starts. How do you emotionally and professionally process that as an athletic director and make sure that you're leading your program and supporting your current coach and juggling that balancing act the way that you need to set your programs up for success?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if Matt used this differently, but I don't know that you have time to be in your emotions about it. It's like this is what's happening, and it's time to process, make a decision, and move forward. And things are happening quickly, and so we kept as our North Star through the whole process. What can we do to give this team, these student athletes, the best experience that we can give them? What can we do to give them the best chance to be able to have success at these opportunities? Because as you mentioned, we get this information. This is happening, a week before we're even playing in the championship game. And so as I was moving through the semester and we knew, we were having a good year moving through the season, I knew that there would be a possibility that somebody might hire Coach away, but I didn't anticipate that it was really going to come to a head before a championship game. I figured we would at least get through the championship, and then those conversations or those announcements would be made. And so one of the big adjustments was, hey, that this was happening. We got to the end of the regular season, but the very next day, this announcement is being made. And so you're automatically now having to answer questions about, okay, what does this mean for the championship game? Will he coach in the CFP? And all of those things that became a part of the national discourse. So there's not a lot of time in that space. You do have to do some work to prepare yourself and kind of run through those scenarios. I know for me, it was important to be in alignment with my president, because it's one thing for me to want something to happen, but it's another thing if he decided that he thought we should go in a different direction. So fortunately, we were able to pretty quickly get alignment around the idea that we wanted to do what was in the best interest of giving these student athletes a chance to be able to win. But it was a ton of stuff that was happening at the same time. You're trying to process things on a number of different levels, including knowing for sure that you're now starting a search for your new head football coach. So in addition to the things that you had going on, that's another one that quickly went to the top of the list of things that you had to consider. And so you navigate it as best you can. You keep the main thing, so to speak, when it comes to student athlete experience. You keep informed the people that you feel like you need to keep informed, starting with your president, and then you make the best decision that you can possibly make.
Yeah, I would say so much of what David said was my experience, right? And I think there's probably no secret that I think our processes replicated each other in a lot of ways. We were going through the exact same thing and really met the exact same timeline. And two things that really came up to me in that answer that he just gave was honest, transparent communication. We were able to be as, I think, successful as we were navigating a coaching transition and giving our program the best chance to be successful because of open, honest communication between Coach Chesney and myself, between myself and our president. We had several weeks of runway there to know kind of what was happening, what the timelines, what they might be at other places. Ultimately, it leaked a couple of days before the early signing period. I think we were all dealing with it, knowing that other places wanted to take care of themselves. Certainly understand that, but I think that honest communication, it allowed me to start doing homework early, building my candidate list, starting to vet people, employ a search firm, do all those sorts of things. So without that, you are scrambling more. But the thing that I go back to that I think was most important was just this agreement between everybody involved that the most important thing was the 2025 version of our football program and giving them the best chance to play as long and as successful as they possibly could. And I think just having that value system, having that understanding, that mutual respect that this is what's most important, it gave us the best chance, right, to win to get to a conference championship game, to win a conference championship game, to perform the way that we did, Tulane and JMU alike in the CFP, and representing our institutions, our conferences, our subdivision. But at the same time, knowing that the coaching staff was so focused on 2025, it allowed me to look ahead to 2026 and make sure that we're projecting and protecting our program to allow for sustained success.
Yeah, and I would just add to this, and I should have said this earlier. As I had conversations with Coach Summerall, he said from the very beginning, if I am in a position where I'm going to accept another position, I want to coach the championship game. I want to coach us if we're in the CFP. And I have said to, institution that I'm engaged with, that's a deal breaker for me.
Same
If
here.
I'm not in a position to be able to do that, then I'm not interested in your job. And so I think if John had approached that differently, if he had been not as confident that he could do this or that he wanted to do it, if he had hemmed and hawed some, then it would have been harder. Not saying we wouldn't have gotten to the same spot, but I had confidence because he wanted to do this. He was willing to put in the extra hours. He wanted to make sure that this team had the very best experience. And he, to Matt's point, he drew a very clear line of separation that, hey, I have decided to coach another team in 2026, but it ain't 2026 yet, right? This is still about this team and practice tomorrow and preparing for what we have to do, which is to go out and win a championship. And so when your leader of your program has that type of passion and conviction and says, even if it's hard on me, because it would have been quite easy to walk away and go start with your new institution. Signing day is coming up, and you could have put your head down and said, I'm now employed by the University of Florida. That's my priority. But he spent time on planes going back and forth and trying to hold both classes together during signing day, and just did a number of things that I think he deserves kudos for, because it opened the door to make this decision a little bit easier during a complicated time.
And I'll just reinforce the same thing, right? Bob did a phenomenal job with that. We were the beneficiary of 3 time zones difference, which allowed those late nights here to still be productive for him on the West Coast. But it was out and back in pretty short order to be introduced there. And then there was a renewed laser focused attention to this team. And then we had the luxury of being able to have, and I know David and them a little bit different situation promoting from within, but Billy being available when he was, we were actually able to have both staffs on the field, right, in the venue together. There was a lot of communication that could happen. Billy to Bob, talking about what's next for each one of them, that I think allowed them to both hit the ground running when it was that time as well.
I want you to take us through that period of time between when your current head coach is moving on, you're going to be doing a coaching search, and the end of the CFP run, where you're wearing multiple hats. As you both said, the North Star is making sure that the student athletes on the 2025 team have the full support and are being supported for success. And yet what your next step is in terms of making sure that the program is set up for sustainable success in 2026 and beyond. How did you personally manage that balancing act in terms of devoting staff time, your own time, to leveraging the moment that's right in front of you and making sure that you're also preparing for the future and setting the program up for success in the long term?
I think part of handling the moment was preparing for it. And so when you're talking about the resources you're able to commit to the head coach, to his assistant coaches, to his support staff, we had that in place, well before, right? So as you're hiring, there's flexibility certainly, but we knew about where we wanted to be. Same way with our rev share numbers, right? As we started to build out that scouting department, which is a whole different change for us and kind of our personnel area, we're bringing people into the building, and they knew very well what resources that they were able to have, which as they start to evaluate, as they start to, anticipate what's going to be, come January 2nd, that was where their attention was, and that was the work that they were going to be doing. And so I think preparing for that moment was really good. But in the same way that coaches were working double time, we were working double time. My days were a lot longer. There were so many times where I've joked, and I've told this story to a group here. I would lie down in the bed at 10 o'clock, and my wife would say, "Hey, don't worry, my day was good too," because I was just so out of it. From sunup to sundown, I was so focused on trying to handle that transition as best as I possibly could. It required a lot, and it certainly required the attention and the effort of people in our organization. It probably took a toll, and there were sacrifices at home, but it just required us doing what we do and we're trained to do a lot longer and maybe a lot more intensely.
Yeah, it's funny as Matt talks about that. It makes me think that because of the hours, some of which I was doing in the office and some of which I was at home. So if we were doing virtual calls with coaching candidates, doing some of that at home or having discussions and things on the phone. And so, but the one thing you don't think about is how invested your family, specifically for me, my kids, got involved in this whole process and keeping up with what was happening on social media and hearing what people were saying and hearing what I'm saying actually in some of these conversations. And so it got to a point where the biggest pressure that I was getting was from my own kids saying, "Okay, so did you talk to somebody today, and where are we and where things stand?" I'm like, I don't work for you guys. I mean, I work for you within the family standpoint, trying to give you money for education and all of that stuff. But when it comes to my job, I need you guys to take one firm step back and give Dad a minute to be able to breathe. I'm okay with having this, outside the house, but inside the house, just give me a minute, right? So they were very much engaged throughout the entire process because you are working all these hours. They can sense that this is a big deal, that it's important, that it's on the national landscape, that a lot of people are paying attention to it, and they don't want their dad to screw it up too badly. And so, trying to manage through that, I just think about the number of days when we were kind of having that back and forth about the whole process. But Matt's right. You're putting in long hours, just like your coaches are. And you're right, because you know that you have a coach who's going to be sought after. It was weeks before this whole process got, really going, that you're thinking about this, and that if you didn't already have a short list, that you're putting the short list together, and that you're thinking about some scenarios and you're trying to anticipate, and you start to think, okay, if we're in this position, then what kind of financial framework are you putting together for the next coach, and what's the salary and the salary pool and the rev share? And so that as you go into the process, you've had a long enough runway to be able to be prepared. So if there's any benefit to having your coach be popular and be pursued in the way that our coaches were, is that if you're paying attention even a little bit, you know that there's work that should be done and can be done in advance to try to get you to the finish line a little bit more efficiently than if you were caught off guard at the last minute. And part of that, as Matt said, is based on the honesty and transparency of the men involved and their willingness to say, "Hey, this is what I'm looking at doing. Hey, this really is a possibility. Hey, these are the schools that I'm looking at. These are the ones that I'm not looking at. If you're hearing reports in this direction, these are not true, but here's what I'm really focused on, and here's my timeline, and here's a plan on when I'm going to communicate what was going on." And so, between the announcement with CFP all the way to the game, that communication just continues, right? As you're doing the things to prepare for the game and prepare for the trip. Nothing was more important than trying to make sure that we were in alignment, we were in lockstep about how we wanted to move forward and get ourselves to the finish line.
Let's talk about the search process a little bit. A lot of parallels to this point in terms of the timing and the progression of how your two teams were moving through very similar processes, but the outcomes of your searches were different in terms of David making an internal hire, Matt going outside. But would love to learn more about what those search processes looked for each of you. So starting with you, David, as you're looking to replace a successful coach, you've had a lot of momentum in your program. What are some of the factors that you're considering in terms of internal, external continuity of the program that's been built and the momentum in place, and what the needs are for the program moving forward, and how did those factors, play into your decision-making process?
Yeah, so you end up looking at it on a few levels. You start with, what are you looking for in your next head coach? And so for us, we decided that leadership was important. Looking at proven, head coaching experience, integrity, ability to be able to connect with and relate to the student athletes, ability to be able to recruit, ability to be able to put together a strong staff were all parts of the conversation as we put together our pool. We knew that we had a very strong internal candidate going into the process, but we felt like because we had success and we had this momentum and we had done a number of things that had put us in a good position, it was important for us to do a national search and be able to look at the entire landscape of candidates that were out there to be considered. And so I'm glad that we went through that process because it gave our guy, Coach Hall, a chance to really distinguish himself as having the things that we were looking for, but also bringing to the table something that the other candidates didn't do as strongly as he did, which was express an incredible passion about wanting this opportunity, and excitement and understanding because he had been here previously and then had come back and was on the staff currently. So he had a great combination of knowledge of exactly who we were, but excitement and passion about the opportunity to be able to go forward in a significant way. And so for us, we knew that continuity would be an important thing, but not to the point that you are going to side with continuity if you're not hiring the right person. Right. And so that always has to be what's at the top of your list. Who's the best person for the position? It just so happens for us, the person that we felt was best also gave us a chance to be able to have some continuity within the program as far as coaches that were going to be retained, other operational staff members that were going to be retained, and then student athletes as well. And so when you've had success and you've been able to duplicate that and you feel like there's someone or a group of people who have a sense of what has gone in to be able to create that, I think there is tremendous value in having that knowledge, having those people, having that sense continue to be in your building. But you also know you have to be smart enough that nothing guarantees success, right? You can have many of the same people from the previous staff on the next one. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to end up in another conference championship game or another CFP situation. Every year, the same thing the coaches say to the student athletes, you have to earn it every year, different set of circumstances, different challenges that you have to deal with, different things that are going to go wrong. This team, under our new leader, will have to successfully navigate a new landscape, different than the one that we've had in the past. But we did place value on the ability to be able to understand and see what Tulane football had become, many of the things that we had done to try to create the momentum and create the success. And then having someone that our student athletes had developed a very positive relationship with, because we knew that being able to retain many of our student athletes was going to be important. We knew we wouldn't retain all of them. Some of those guys got, high 6-figure and 7-figure offers that we knew they were going to be in a position to take. They've earned it, and we certainly wish them well. But we knew that the best chance that we had to be able to continue to have success started with our ability to retain some of our really good young players who were going to come back and we felt like had an opportunity to really have breakout seasons next year and in the future. And so our advantage, so to speak, was that a lot of the guys that were developing relationships with those young men were in our building. And so it gave us a chance to be able to fairly seamlessly be able to move from one staff to another and hopefully have retained or attracted in enough new players that it'll give us a chance to have success next season.
So the last 4 head coaches at JMU had all some sort of head coaching experience, whether that was an interim role, moving from FCS, moving from D3, D2, FCS, you name it, right? So they all had some sort of head coaching experience. So I probably would have been a fool to not stick with at least that part of the recipe for what has made this place so successful. And so when you talk about internal hires versus external hires, we did not have anybody, had a phenomenal staff, but we did not have anybody on the current staff, previous staff now, who was able to check that box. And so pretty clearly early on, we knew that we would be running the same way as David, a national search to try to find the best candidate that we possibly could. With that in mind, right, you absolutely want to do the same things, retain as much as we could off of a very talented roster, people who know the culture, knows what makes this place tick, somebody who could recruit at a high level. I think in a one portal world, someone who can evaluate pretty timely, not miss as much as maybe some other people do because you don't have that backstop now in the spring. So somebody who had a reputation as being a tremendous evaluator. I think part of that evaluation is to modernize our program in some ways. We're the ones who are fairly new to FBS. And there's a lot of things that we probably do that still resemble the way an FCS program operates. You don't want to lose what gets you here. But at the same time, if you're not always looking for ways to improve, to maybe fix the things that you're succeeding in spite of, then that's probably a recipe for some sort of disaster. But one of the things that we kept coming back to was our fans, deservedly so, have high expectations. From the 2 years with Sig to now the last 2 years with Bob, we have achieved at a pretty historic rate in terms of our football success. And so trying to find somebody who had enjoyed a similar type success before. And at Louisiana during his tenure, Billy had done just that. And what we were most encouraged by, though, was we were getting somebody with a high degree of motivation and wanting to prove, I think, as I've said this, as much himself right and what he believes in and the power to transform people through college football as he wants to prove other people wrong. But I think we're getting a very motivated version of Billy. And then when you talk about retaining, we were able to keep two coaches who, again, have been part of this place, who know our roster, who know how we practice, who know the way that we do things here. And then we've been able, just like we've been able to replenish the roster, I think we've been able to replenish the staff with tremendous evaluators, recruiters, developers of players and young men.
You both touched on the roster and the challenges of when you win. Sometimes you don't just lose your coach, you can lose some of your star performers as well. How much of a factor was having a head coach who understood the realities and the challenges that come with leading a program at this level, and even some of the challenges that come with success at this level? How important was it to make sure you had a leader who understood what you were up against and would continue to be up against as it relates to those realities?
You certainly want them to be aware of the situation that they're inheriting. And, we go from 2 years ago having to replace, I think, almost 99% of our roster production, about 65 total players, to last year that number, I think, was in the mid-50s. It sounds like with ad drop next week, we're probably going to be in the mid-50 range again this time. And so that is a reality that I think we all inherit or all have to deal with. I think we take solace in the fact that, even the highest resource programs in America, they might not have that number, but there's transition year to year, right? That transition is happening in every program across America. But we certainly wanted somebody that understood the situation that they were stepping into. I think maybe less being concerned with what the fallout of that would be, probably driven more by the motivation of that's a good problem to have. I would much rather have our roster be attractive to people year in, year out than people saying, hey, those guys aren't successful, they're not about the right things. And so I think we were focused probably more on having somebody that can meet the level of expectation of our fans, of our institution, who are driven internally to contend for championships and compete for CFP appearances every year more than we probably were what the fallout of that could be.
I would just add to that as you're looking at coaching candidates, the job has changed from the time period where you can bring in a guy as a freshman and develop them. And by the time they're a junior and a senior, they're ready to be an all conference caliber player. Maybe that happens within your program, but it's just as likely based on the type of programs that we both run that maybe even after that freshman year, they're being offered more money to go to another institution. And so having our coaches understand that the job now really is year to year, and what can you get done with this team? How can you maximize the development of these players in a 1 year time period, while you're always wanting and looking to and trying to build an infrastructure that will keep them there for multiple years, and having the ref share to give you the chance to be able to do that. You're really about maximizing in a much shorter period of time the talents of these very talented, young men. And so having a coach who understands that that is now with the challenges, you may have someone who comes on your campus in January and is going to be leaving by the next January. So you have a fairly condensed period of time. And before they changed the portal windows, you were having some that were coming in, at the beginning of the summer and then leaving the following January. So you had an even shorter period of time. And so I think the other piece of this puzzle then is, as you're trying to develop uh, your student athletes to be the best players that they can be during a condensed period of time, what about team culture? And what are you doing intentionally to take a lot of these guys who are coming from different places, who've been on your campus for a short period of time, and build an effective winning team with a culture that's about discipline and love and accountability and the ability to perform at the very highest level. So finding coaches that can do great work and development in a more condensed period of time, but also build a culture that usually would take several years of having the same players. You would. I've been in athletics long enough to know that typically what you would have is a coach saying, "I'm going to bring in my players." And after they've been in the system for a year, for 2 years, they'll understand what we want and how we want to do things and how we want to create things. So by the time they're juniors, they will all get it. We'll be on the same page. We'll have a strong winning culture that reflects the way that I'd like to do things. Well, you can still have some of that, but that dynamic has changed to where the work has to be done much faster. And so, what are you doing? One of our questions as we went through the interview process was about name something that you do intentionally within your team to build a strong culture, because we know that that's a part of what helps us to be able to win and have success. It's not just about having good players, but it's about taking these guys who may not know each other very well and who haven't played together and making them a team in a short period of time and preparing them to go out and play an incredibly competitive schedule. And so our previous coach had a great ability to do that. We believe our current coach possesses that same ability.
I want to zoom out a little bit before we step away from this topic and just ask you guys for your thoughts on what changes or evolutions would you like to see occur in the near future to help bring more stability and sustainability, particularly to the schools that are competing at your level, so that it's more than just a reset every 6 months or every 12 months. What kind of things do you envision are feasible that could be accomplished in terms of processes and protocols that would help you all to have a longer runway to develop those young men and women and to build those programs up?
Yeah, and I think you think about it from a couple of different angles. Maybe one is more on point with your question, but I think about just the industry in general and some of the conversations that that are happening right now about how we can get the recruiting windows and the transfer windows away from the time period where coaches are making decisions to change institutions or you're playing postseason games. And so I think we've done a good job getting the windows down to one window, but perhaps that window needs to be later. Maybe it needs to be, in the spring, so you don't have the push around the transfer portal and entrance and exit of players around the time that you're also preparing for postseason games and you're potentially bringing in a new staff. If those can be separated to where when you get to the reward, which is the end of your season, that you can have as much of your team as necessary to be able to go out and compete for a championship or perhaps to play in a bowl game, that you have that available. And then if your coach is departing and you're bringing in a new coach, that you look at the signing day window and the transfer portal window. How can you do that in a way to where there's not such a mixing of all of that, that you have too many things that are happening that are working against each other at the same time, especially during the most critical part of the season. So I think that's a big piece. And then the other thing that I would say, and I know you're starting to see some of this nationwide, but what level of protection are schools going to feel comfortable putting into rev share and NIL contracts, so that if you're at a place like JMU or you're at a place like Tulane and someone is coming to get your players, that there is some protection, whether that's financial protection or whatever it is. If we're becoming more like a business, then those considerations probably need to begin to happen. I know that it's a big deal right now, what's happening with Duke and our former quarterback here at Tulane, Darian Mensah, and the situation that's evolving and now becoming a legal issue. That type of stuff, I think we're going to see probably more and more. And so if we can get our arms around how we can, because we know that's going to continue. So people are going to continue to move from one institution to the next. And student athletes are going to do what's in their best interest and the best interest of their family. I certainly have no issue with that. And that's never going to change. And that's the way it should be. But if we can put in some guardrails that protect the industry, so that as student athletes are pursuing new opportunities, it is not necessarily always at the cost of an institution who is also looking to try to have success. So as much as we can to consider a system that gives student athletes great opportunity, but also provides some degree of protection for institutions, I think would be the best option for everyone.
Ryan, my answer is probably it's more problems than it is solutions, right? And it's the thing that we never want. But, David talked about it, issues with the calendar. I think about the seasons that we just had. We'd probably be lying to ourselves if we said if we didn't make the CFP, there would have been a sense of disappointment that just going to a bowl game would have been, a letdown. And that's a shame, right? I mean, there's more than 12 teams a year who deserve to celebrate the year that they had. But the calendar, doesn't help that, because you see this mass migration of people away from their teams and onto whatever's next. I think, looking at spring ball, looking at, summer OTAs and mini camps, like how do we kind of figure out those things that maybe aren't sacred to the game of college football? How do we build upon it? I was a transfer student athlete myself, and so I'm all for mobility. But I understand that unlimited mobility leads to tampering. David talked about the situation that is in the news right now. That's a tort claim, right? I mean, the interference of a contract, we're dealing with real problems. And I don't know that I have a solution to any single one of them, other than to suggest we have to stop looking out for self-interest. We have to be professionals. This industry, the game, is worth fighting for, and we have to figure out a way to come together, develop a new calendar, develop what the portal looks like, figure out those legal protections, look at all of these different things, because again, it's the life lessons that we teach, the things that we do on a daily basis. The reason that we signed up to do this is worth fighting for. So, I can't sit here and say that there's any one specific solution that I have, other than to say that we are dealing with problems, but I don't think they're problems that can't be overcome if we look out for the whole instead of just the individual.
That's good. A couple of quick professional development questions before we get you out of here. Cal's has always emphasized peer learning and shared experiences. To that end, why are conversations like this, ADs learning from each other in real time with shared experiences, more important than ever in college athletics?
These jobs have a tendency to be lonely sometimes. We're talking about going through a search, and yeah, you surround yourself with a great staff and people, but you understand that the weight of that is on one person's shoulders very often. I have learned, I hope people learn as they tune into this report in time, but, hearing David speak has been beneficial for me. It reinforces certain things. There's been nuggets that I've picked up along the way. And I just think there's incredible value in peer to peer, right? Professional to professional, understanding that we can collaborate. And, coaches, they're probably going to compete a little bit more than we do. But how can we, back to my last answer, how can we come together as an industry to share best practices, to share experiences with one another so that the next person might avoid the mistakes that we make? And, Cal's is phenomenal for that. I always come back from that uplifted more than anything that I do. And it's because there are professionals in the room, right? There's people who are dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with on a daily basis and that our staff deals with on a daily basis. And opportunities like this are just an extension of that.
I think about when I first started in the profession working in academic support at Ole Miss and going through my first year as a director. I believe it was 1998. That next summer, the summer of 99, I think N4A may have been in Cincinnati. And I went to it not really knowing anything about what it was about. And I can remember going there and leaving and feeling so much more empowered and relieved because I had no sense of the industry that was out there dealing with the same issues that I was dealing with. And so I really thought that some of the stuff that I was dealing with was unique. And I went and found an incredibly supportive environment of professionals who really wanted to cooperate and collaborate about the issues that were facing the industry at that time. And that's been consistent throughout my entire time within the industry. And so I think for all of us, we have to be constantly learning. And because we're dealing with some things that maybe the industry hasn't faced before, being able to reach out to each other and get advice, especially from those who have gone through some of the things that we're about to enter into, I think is tremendously important because our ability to learn from each other is going to help us do the right things by our student athletes, right? None of us are looking to be or trying to be the smartest person in the room that has all the answers for everything. I think all of us are always looking for opportunities to learn from others. If it's going to get us the very best result, for our student athletes, then we want to lean on each other to get the benefit of those who've gone before us and use that information to solve problems.
Last question. A lot of young administrators and aspiring athletic directors in the Cal's audience who hope to someday be fortunate enough to lead a program at the level of success that you all are enjoying today. So thinking about that audience, what's one piece of advice that you'd share with our Cal's community that might help them on their journey as they continue to invest in themselves and their own professional development in preparation for an opportunity to sit in the chair someday?
I would say continue to look and find ways to invest in the intersection of your talent and your passion, right? Because ultimately, the people who get a chance to do these jobs have distinguished themselves as being really good at something, being really good many times at a variety of things. And usually that happens because you found a place where the things that you feel most strongly about, the things that you feel passionate about, and the things that you have been blessed to be talented at, if you can bring those two things together, it gives you a chance to really be able to elevate in a competitive landscape to where you can distinguish yourself as someone who is ready for leadership opportunities. And so, whether it's in the work that you're doing now or as you're assessing whatever your next opportunity is, then looking for those intersections between what you do well and what you feel most strongly about give you a chance to do the one thing that oftentimes gets overlooked, which is do a great job in the job that you have right now. I know our industry many times is focused on the next opportunity and networking for the next opportunity and how do you position yourself for the next thing. But the basic premise of knocking it out of the park wherever you are right now, doing whatever you're doing right now, still to me comes in first and foremost when you're looking at elevation with your opportunities?
That's a really good answer, David. I would say constantly learn. I think back of people that I had no business calling as I was coming up in this profession. Really, frankly, working outside of athletics early on in my career, knowing that I wanted to get into athletics. Looking at people like David Williams, who was at Vanderbilt at the time, in more titles and more roles than any one man could ever do, but he did it incredibly well. And I think about the calls that I would make to him and to so many different others, and just those little nuggets of information that I keep stored on my phone today that I rely upon from time to time. Like, if you want to be a successful AD, you need to be good at 1, 2, 3, 4. There's so many things that I learned then, and again, building upon what you asked just a moment ago, I still learn today. My goal is to become 1% better every single day, right, as an administrator. And I usually do that through, again, experiences like this one and CALS and, just relationships and the networking that's intentional. And I feel like I'm piggybacking on David's answer just again, but be the best that you possibly can be where you are. And that's just going to lead to so many opportunities. There's probably a more eloquent way to say that, but if you're phenomenal at what you do, people will take notice, and that's going to lead to so many opportunities. You're going to be better prepared and ready for that opportunity when that opportunity comes, because you poured yourself into where you were. There's no shortcut to the chair. If you get to the chair too soon and without that preparation, you could get exposed. Not all the time, but you could get exposed. So I would say do the best job where you are. And that's going to lead to tremendous opportunities and success whenever what comes next.
That's sound advice. Great insights from both of you. Again, can't thank you enough for making time to be with us this month. Thank you for your continued engagement and investment in CALS and the CALS community. Congratulations to you both again on an incredible football season, and best of luck to both of your programs this spring.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Welcome to the CALS Report. I'm Dane Fischer, former Division I basketball coach for 19 years, including 5 as a head coach. I'm excited to be joined today by Jonathan Botros, Deputy Director of Athletics and COO at Texas Tech, and Josh Cowan, Deputy Athletics Director for Athletics Advancement at Mississippi State. In addition to a wide range of responsibilities at institutions, both Jonathan and Josh serve as their sports administrators for their men's basketball programs, which is the focus of today's conversation. We're going to hop into a lot about your jobs currently, but before we get there, I'd love to hear a little bit about what first sparked your interest in college athletics, the path that ultimately led you to where you are today. Jonathan, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, good morning, and appreciate you having me. I joined, my finance background is in finance. And so I started there in banking in the mortgage industry, and then took a job as an analyst at Texas Tech years back, and had the fortune early on to work actually on the budget for the athletic department with the CFO at the time of athletics. And just had some, time to spend with him, and quickly realized, okay, athletics is a spot that I'd love to aspire to get to one day. So from that day on, that was kind of my goal in earning my way over to this side of campus. Sometimes we always call it, general campus or main campus. It feels like you're on an island over here. So that's kind of how it was, and feel fortunate and blessed that I finally found my way over here about 9 years ago as the CFO, and then transitioned to the deputy role about 2 or 3 years ago. So that's kind of quickly my story.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, most coaches go the other way. They coach for a while, and then they go to the finance route when the coaching ends.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Josh, how about you?
I can actually thank college basketball for a lot of the reason where I am today. Started off as a manager at Kansas State for men's basketball. Thought I wanted to coach, for a really long time, and had the great fortune of working for Jim Woolridge and Bob Huggins and Frank Martin. And so, and then by good fortune of a bad decision on a bus driver, when we were getting ready to go play Colorado, you fly into Denver International Airport, and usually you kind of go up that loop on 470 or whatever it is to Boulder. He decided he was going to go into downtown Denver, and we hit a bunch of traffic. But the beauty of that was I was seated with Chad Weiberg, who's now the AD at Oklahoma State. And, we got into a really long discussion just about athletic administration and what that was. And there was a different path there than just what I had always thought of coaching college basketball and what that could look like. And so that conversation sparked into a role and into a career in athletic administration, and a few stops along the way. And
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's great to hear a little bit about your past. Again, everybody's got kind of a unique way into it, and real fortunate to have you guys with us and talking a little bit about sports administration here. And for both of you, you oversee very high profile programs in elite conferences. How would you define great sports supervision today? How has that role maybe changed a little bit over the last, say, 3 to 5 years? Josh, why don't you take this one to start?
yeah, I think the basics of it are still accurate. You want to be a resource, you want to be a sounding board, you want to help your coaches navigate challenges. Here at Mississippi State, we talk a lot about advance, balance, and connect. From a sport administrator perspective, what are you doing to advance your program forward? What are you doing from a balance standpoint of just weighing that with your athletic director, with external constituents, and then connecting. Make sure you're aligning and developing relationships with those student athletes and with former alumni and the coaching staff and just everything that you can do in that regard. And so I think the fundamentals of it haven't changed, of just diving in and doing that, but certainly, given NIL and the transfer portal and just the evolving world over the last few years, it's certainly created different conversations that you end up, I feel like, having with your coaches more often than not, right? That just wasn't there, pre-NIL or pre-rev share. So certainly it's evolved a lot, but I think the fundamentals and the core basics of it have stayed the same.
I think that's great. That's great insight right there. Jonathan.
Yeah, no, Josh is right. This answer is probably a lot different 3-4 years ago, right? But yeah, I agree. Our coaches and our coaching staff, they always walk around with their record above their head, right? It's part of it, right? It's always, from the outside looking in, there's going to be a win-loss record, and that's a lot of pressure. And so for me, I'm always thinking of it as, what pressures can I kind of take off of our coaching staff, specifically our head coach, and working with his team. And we're fortunate we have an unbelievable set of assistant coaches and support staff that help Coach McCasson on a day-to-day basis. But what things can I interject and help with specifically, knowing the pressures that are on that group? And again, Josh talked about fundamentals. It's kind of cliche to say it's relationships, but that's what it is. What relationships do you have at the conference? What relationships do you have with officials, with all the folks at other schools that you're visiting and things like that can help take some of those pressures off of the logistics and the operations and things like that. And just, every coach is a little different, and you got to meet them where they are. Some of them want to talk directly to compliance about compliance issues. Some of them want to talk to the sport administrator about it. Somebody want to talk about NIL directly with your GM, and others want to engage a sport administrator. So just meeting the coach where they are on those type of things, I would say.
Yeah, those are great. And I think that, it's interesting to hear both of you talk about kind of the fundamentals of leadership are always the fundamentals of leadership, right? And our challenges always are going to evolve. And it's great to hear you guys kind of lean on that with your fundamentals, but are aware of obviously all of the changes and the most significant ones that have taken over these couple of years. So I want to ask you guys a little bit about non-conference scheduling, which as a former basketball coach, like that's something none of us want to deal with. But I'd love to hear a little bit from you guys, some of your overarching strategies that you maybe have, maybe some of the constraints that you deal with, some of the challenges, how you work with your coach, other sports admins, external partners in building the schedule. So, Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Sure. Yeah. It's a challenging one, right? You're always trying to take the lead from your basketball program and understanding what's important to them as it relates to setting themselves up for a positive postseason, right? And a lot of times that looks different from year to year. When you schedule an opponent and what their net or their resume looks like by the time you play them, oftentimes that can change significantly, right? And so we've changed, we've evolved even in the 3 years that Coach McCaslin has been here. I would say we've had assistant coaches move on and get head jobs. And so a lot of times those guys may take somebody with them, or somebody may get a job. And so the person that's helping with scheduling moves on. And so the timing of everything kind of shifts. But again, I would always say that for us, we're starting with what's important to them competitively. And then the other pieces fill in as it relates to financials, and involving our CFO as it relates to buy games and what's the budget for buy games, is obviously a big piece of it. And then now, NIL is a huge component of it, right? And what are these, third party or neutral site NIL games that can be a part of it, right? To help our student athletes and NIL opportunities. And so it's really just marrying those different ideas, from the financials to the competitive pressures and to now with NIL. And again, just being a support system for them. And so Brian Pete on Coach McCaslin's staff is in charge of that now. It is a big role, and it is a challenging role, but just understanding and making sure that he knows that I'm here to help him in that. And then we have an arena, right, that's shared between our women's program, our men's program, and our volleyball program. So now you've got, those challenges as well in scheduling across 3 different sports. And so, that's kind of the foundation of it for us.
Yeah, for sure. The piece I picked up there, again, as a former coach, that I hear is, it's so hard with the transfer portal now to know year to year what a team is going to look like. And so, like you said, you might schedule a game a year in advance thinking this is a perfect game for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden, the next year, that team is totally different than you thought. And that definitely has another layer to it. So, Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I was just hoping Jonathan was going to offer up like a home and home with Mississippi State. Like it's not.
Josh, when you're ready.
Ready. Yeah, no, he said it really well. I think the thing that is obviously the huge challenge is the changing environment. Our coaching staff does a phenomenal job, the best that they can, of obviously, diving into the data heavily in the metrics. Everything, the North Star is what's going to set Mississippi State up for the best opportunity, metric wise, knowing that we play in the SEC and what, typically, how many quad, one games you're going to have, all those type of things. And metric wise, what's going to give you the best opportunity to get to an NCAA tournament in advance. And then obviously all the data and the research, and the studying of teams along with style of play and what our coaching staff thinks is best for, what we want to attack and how we want to do and what the construct and makeup of our team, is potentially going to look like, right? Coach Jans, and the staff here, in the 3 years I've been here, we have played a lot of neutral site games. They love the neutral site games for the NIL components, sometimes that come with that, for the, what they perceive as sometimes a little bit better metrics of what they're trying to accomplish. But also too, balancing for us, the thing that we talk a lot about, we've been able to really grow, our season ticket and our donor base here, since Coach has been here, and he's really, reinvigorated, this fan base and the passion and the fire for Mississippi State basketball. And so, yeah, for us, we've got 50% of our season ticket holders that drive over 2 hours or more one way, just to get to our basketball games. And so for us, we're always trying to balance and keep that in mind. And, we always want to ensure that we're doing everything we can do to provide, value and make them want to come into Humphrey Coliseum and support our team. This year, we did something really unique where, Coach was on board with it. And, we had the A Bowl in football. So we played Ole Miss, which is obviously our huge rival, the Friday after Thanksgiving. And then in men's basketball, ended up playing SMU, obviously a great opponent, in men's basketball a few hours after that. So just trying to draw, on that football crowd being in Starkville and the passion and the excitement of that day. And we ended up having a great crowd, and people really loved that. And so we're always trying to be unique and creative, in those regards. And our men's basketball staff does a great job of bringing those unique ideas to the table a lot of times, and we want to do everything we can do to help make it work.
Yeah, that's really neat. And we certainly know that if number one, you're going to get the opinion of your fans, no matter what you do in your scheduling. And if they had their way, it'd always be much easier than obviously what we just discussed and the layers to this that they probably don't know about. Which kind of takes us to the next question, actually. Talk us about a little bit about kind of a typical week for you guys during the season, and maybe what are some things that happen behind the scenes that certainly fans don't know about, and maybe even coaches at times. Jonathan, go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, this is a timely question, right? I think a lot of us have been dealing with a lot of significant winter weather that's impacted multiple sports, but specifically our basketball programs. And so kind of behind the scenes, last week, we were fortunate enough to have college game day here Saturday morning, and then played, obviously one of the best teams in the country in the University of Houston later that day. The game was originally scheduled for 5:30, and as we start talking through it, working with the sport administrator at Houston, Dave, who was awesome in helping and just saying, hey, kind of like Josh talked about with the Boulder story, right? And we see a challenge ahead of us in getting out of Lubbock, and sure enough, they ended up having to stay until late Sunday. But we're just trying to, what can we do from our seats, right, to help solve that challenge before it even hits us? Right, we're going to have students lining up outside of our arena at 4 a.m. to get in. What can we do to keep them safe? We're going to have teams that need to, another team that needs to try to get out of town Saturday evening, and we want to fill the house as much as we can for a great college basketball game. So, long story short, thankful to the league and helping us and ESPN and our television partners worked through all of that and got the game moved up 4.5 hours. I think it was largely attributable, and helped us, get the crowd that we had. And so that's just an example, Dane, kind of a situation where you got to kind of find, and be creative and finding ways and working with the relationships that you have with other schools and the league to help find a solution that makes an even a game that's already going to be fantastic even better.
That's great. It's a great example of one of the many, many things that go on, day to day that you're dealing with, obviously. Josh, what do you got for us?
I was going to say the same thing. We were in the same situation. We were going to be tip off at 5 p.m., ended up moving our game up to 11 with this ice storm that came through. And again, there's a lot of communication that's got to be involved with not only your staff. Trace Wilgus, the sport admin at Vanderbilt, was phenomenal, and he's communicating with his group, and we're communicating with Garth Lisbon at the SEC and television networks. And so just trying to make sure that that everything's aligned. And then, same as Jonathan, for us, it's the home game. So then you've got to make sure that, event operations and concessions and, the lights still got to go on. You got to play the game and adjust and work through a lot of those challenges of people maybe not wanting to travel and come in and work that day. Because for us, we were skirting a pretty fine line with the game ending around 1 o'clock of when that storm was going to hit. And so yeah, I mean, it's all those type of things. I think the weeks, look different when you have something like that pop up. I mean, you're still dealing with 18 to 22-year-old young men at times that make 18 to 22-year-old decisions. And so, you just don't know what's going to come across your desk that day. And so the job, adjusts and changes depending on what's going on that week.
This reminds me of the question from fans all the time or people outside is like, well, what do you do when you don't have practice? And it's kind of like, well, that's the easiest part of our job. It's all these other things that we're dealing with that make it challenging. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the relationship that you have with your head coaches, and how do you build that trust with a head coach, and then maybe some of the things that you can do to support in those challenging moments, whether it's losing streaks, it's public scrutiny, all the stuff that comes along with the pressures of the job, and just kind of how you navigate that stuff. Josh, why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Yeah, I think the two things for me, I think obviously it takes a little bit of time to build trust. I think I was fortunate with my background in college basketball. I know it's not that same way for everybody, but I think pretty immediately coach had a good feeling that, I knew the game. I knew what his goals were, and knew the ability to navigate it from an administration perspective with him and come alongside him and help advocate for his program. But for me, what you kind of mentioned of just maybe when things aren't going well, I think the thing that I've always leaned on is just having poise and being really consistent, not getting too high and not getting too low, and just kind of always being able to be that sounding board. And again, just that having that consistency and that poise with him and with the staff and in the student athletes. It's an emotional game. There's a lot of pressure. Jonathan alluded to it earlier in the call about these coaches, where that win-loss record above their head. They know where they're at. They know what's going on. And so maybe when things aren't going so great, just the more steady that you can be as a sport administrator for them, and just be there to listen and be an advocate still through tough times, I think is really important.
Josh, so Coach Jans gave you the seal of approval early on. That says a lot because he's a ball coach. He's a ball coach. Yeah, I think for me, similar to what Josh mentioned, right? It's again, like I mentioned, I think just meeting your coach where they are and what they need, depends on the personality. I previously had the fortune to be the sport administrator for track and field with our head coach who's been here for 25, 30 years. And what he needed, the communication style that I use with him is going to be different than Coach McCaslin, than our football coach with Coach McGuire. The type of communication, whether it's texting, whether it's in person, whether it's, on the phone, is just different in what they prefer. And the frequency of communication is different. And so whether it's dropping into practice or whether it is, whatever type of communication is, it's just making sure they're there, whether they see you or not, and how frequently they see you, that you're always, got their back and you're fighting for their program. And when they feel like basketball is very, very important at Texas Tech, you're probably doing your job, well. And so again, just making sure that they understand whatever they need to make sure that they feel like they're supported is key for us.
Oh, those are great answers. I love the fact that you both talked about, you feel like you're kind of in there with them, and the understanding, we know this because we're in athletics, that, you could be on a 3 or 4 game losing streak, but you may have lost all games by a point or two, or, team, you may have played your best basketball of the season. The results just weren't there. And to have people that can understand that and can kind of, like you said, the poise and consistency and just being in there with them is so key. So those are really good answers on that stuff. A lot of people view the sports administrator as, kind of the middle ground between the athletic director and a coach. How do you guys see that role, and what does that dynamic look like kind of in practice? Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and take that?
It's probably different everywhere, but here at Texas Tech, I've talked about it a lot with our athletic director, Kirby Hokut. Like, we are at our best, when he is able to be on the phone. He's able to meet in person daily with our donors, with our board of regents, with his boss, with the president, with supporters. There's a lot of travel required for that. And so, thankfully, he's developed really strong relationships with all 12 of our head coaches. But obviously, as it relates to revenue sports and specifically basketball, he's got a great relationship with Coach McCaslin. And so if I can take a piece of that day to day operationally to kind of serve as that middle ground for him and know, hey, and I think it's working really, really well. Coach McCaslin knows, hey, this is something I'm going to go directly to Kirby on, and no, this is something I'm going to ping off of Jonathan first, and maybe it's something that we all get together on later, or maybe it's something that he and I just work together to solve on our own. And so don't know that there's it's not a science, it's more of an art, but I think, it's working for us.
I spent the vast majority of my career as an assistant coach, which is very similar, obviously, where when you're doing your job as an assistant, you're really trying to take stuff off the head coach's plate, just like you guys both mentioned, and kind of knowing what that balance is. And a lot of times when you're doing a really good job in the roles you're in, it's when people don't really notice you. And it's when you did notice you, you're like, oh, what did I do wrong on this one? So, we could probably do an entire podcast on this next question, but I'm going to throw it to you anyways. Looking ahead, college basketball, where it's headed, what changes? Structural, administrative, calendar-based, anything along those lines that you guys see that are needed to help keep this sport healthy and sustainable? Josh, I think you're up for this one.
Yeah, man, I think you could go a lot of different ways with this. I certainly we've been in this world, in this environment for what, 4 or 5 years now, and certainly don't see it slowing down anytime soon without some action taking place somewhere along the way. For me, I think any way that we can get to a little bit more competitive balance, right? And just knowing and understanding the rules, and knowing and understanding, just having a little bit more consistency. I've probably had more conversations about what X program is paying or what X program is doing, probably more than I care to admit. And we need this in order to compete, right? It used to be facilities, and now that world is evolving a little bit too as well. And so just even some benchmarking, some transparency behind it, would certainly be helpful, because you're just kind of right now in a world of I don't want to say guessing, but you're certainly coaches talk and coaches hear a lot of different things, and then you're always trying to balance what's reality and what's not, right? So I think a little piece of that somewhere along the way would certainly help, I think, the game, and just certainly help being able to predict a little bit more and help guide the program a little bit more.
It's always therapeutic to hear someone else, just say that. No, we've got a sign on the wall down the hall in our administrative offices, right? It's a quote, and it's like, learn the rules of the game and play better than everyone else. Well, the first part of that is becoming more and more challenging, right? And we get it, right, with the House settlement and CSC being so young, and they're making the rules on the fly. And I feel like there's a lot of smart guys and gals up there that are figuring this out and making those rules, but it's tough. It's difficult. And your coaches are asking you all the time, what are the rules? Help us understand. And so we're trying to do our best with that. I think there's always progress that's being made. I think the change to the transfer portal window in basketball is a really positive one. I mean, who thought that, opening the transfer portal the day after the first week of the NCAA tournament was a good idea? I don't know how we got there. So moving that back, I think, will be helpful in that respect, just because even when there's a situation where it makes sense for a young man or a young woman to transfer, doing that in the middle of a postseason run is not great for the school or for the young person. So I think we're making progress there, but I'm optimistic just that we'll gain the clarity that Josh, rightfully alluded to, that we all need as it relates to the rules related to NIL and then the cap and revenue sharing and all those different things. So I think that has to be the focus in the short term.
So my follow-up to that, Jonathan, would be, is any one of your coaches on the staff walk and see that quote and say, hey, at program X, I think their quote says whatever it takes?
There's no doubt. It feels like you're in our building.
Yeah. And I'm guessing there'd be other administrators that would share in that as well and say, yeah, we're dealing with the same thing.
No doubt.
No, it's great insight, like you guys said. And there are so many different layers to it right now. And what I tell people all the time is, if you turn on a basketball game, you watch a college basketball game, it doesn't look much different than it did 5 or 6 years ago. But if you understood what the job was now as coaches, as administrators, it's almost unrecognizable, right? In some of the things that you're dealing with now. And you guys get great insight in terms of some of the things that you're dealing with that, and some ideas maybe to what can hopefully come down the pipe. I want to talk a little bit about CALS. Both of you guys have been to it. How has CALS helped you in terms of your growth and development as college athletics administrators?
I try to avoid the kind of cliche answer about relationships, but that's what it is for me. Obviously, you get some tremendous insight, right, specifically from those that have sat in the chair as an athletic director. And I really think it's cool. Will and the whole group has done a great job of it being administrators that have seen it at every level, because the challenges, the pressures, the resources, everything looks different at every level. So to be able to get those different perspectives is important. But to me, I've made some just incredible relationships the couple of times that I've been, that I've kept. And it's helpful. It's helpful in many ways. It's helpful when you're like, hey, I've got a decision here that I really need some outside perspective on. It's helpful knowing who you can pick up the phone and call. And it's helpful when you've got, you need to schedule a football game or you need to schedule a basketball game, and you've got those relationships at other places. And so I think from that perspective, it's one of the most effective conferences or union of folks that I've been a part of, versus one that has, 3,000-4,000 people and everybody's kind of in a lobby and you hope to see people. This is kind of a more consolidated effort of people that are sitting in your shoes dealing with the same issues as you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is cliche, but it is real. The relationships that I've developed through CALS across the country have paid dividends in more ways than one. Whether it's to benefit and advance your institution, like Jonathan said, of hey, I know X person at this school, and we are trying to play them, or I saw them do something really unique. How can that benefit Mississippi State and advance what we're doing? You can pick up the phone and call, but also too, it kind of has just become like a little, therapy support group too. I feel like over the years, right? Everyone gets in the room and is kind of dealing with real similar stuff. And the beauty of it is, I feel like everybody that goes to CALS, and Will creates this and gets a ton of credit, of the transparency in the room, and the transparency amongst colleagues there is at an all-time high, versus maybe something where it is a lot larger group and with a lot of varying individuals. And so it's just been really great, great for me and my growth and my career, and my networking ability, which I think a lot of times gets used as being a self-serving type word, but the reality of it is it really can help the institution that you're working at. And if you approach it like that, I think it's a really great thing, and CALS has been phenomenal.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really great to hear both of you talk about, obviously one of the benefits of it is there's some networking that comes along with it and potential advancement for your own careers, but it's way more about those people that you can get to know and really lean into. And as we've obviously already talked about this whole podcast, there's a lot of things that all of us are kind of going through for the first time, right? There's not a playbook for a lot of the things that you guys are dealing with. And to be able to have some people you can call and get on the phone with and kind of hear the challenges. I mean, Jonathan, you said earlier, man, it's great to hear somebody else is dealing with these same struggles. So I think that's great. There are a lot of up and coming administrators that do listen to the podcast and see sports supervision as an important step in their career. What would you tell them that they should focus on early on, and how they can build trust with coaches, but still continue to grow and advance within the department?
I think it's like anything, right? Spending time observing, at first, right? And not, trying to overhelp, if you will, right? Throwing out all the basketball terms here. But no, yeah, just kind of observing and figuring out, what exactly the sport need, what the head coaches need, what the sports support staff need in that kind of, again, learning the communication styles and when it makes sense to visit your sport and find out what they're needing. I think, spending the first 45 days or 2-3 months and doing that early is probably one of the keys, I would say.
I think, emotional intelligence is huge in this regard, right? I mean, I know a lot of people want sport administration. I mean, it's a huge responsibility. There's, you can't take it for granted. You're there to make a positive impact, and it's a really critical role in having emotional intelligence to have a lot of, sometimes tough conversations, and being able to create trust and create relationships with, support staff, people all throughout the department, your head coach, the assistant coaches, the student athletes, in whatever sport. It's a really, big deal. And so, it's something that you can't take lightly. You need to take it serious, and you need to be ready to go all in with it. And do everything that you can do to be an advocate for the program that you're sport administrator for.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you guys, again, both talking about growing and developing and advancing, what's the best way to do it? You do a really good job where you are, and you learn and make those genuine relationships. And, it's clearly something that you guys have been able to do to get to where you are, and certainly excited to see where your careers will take you as you go. So, guys, there's so much more we can continue to talk about here, and you've given some unbelievable insight today. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time, Josh and Jonathan, for being with us here. And I know our listeners are going to find this conversation very beneficial, and picking up a lot of what you guys talked about today. I want to wish you guys the best of luck rest of the way here. And when that home and home gets scheduled, okay, I want 4% for the finder's fee. All right.
I don't know that's going to be, neither of us may score 50 because there's going to be some defense played out there. That's for sure.
It'll be one for the true fans. That's for sure.
One score game for sure. Low scoring.
I love it. Well, thanks again, guys, for taking the time this morning. And like I said, I just want to wish you guys the best luck as you head through the rest of the season.
Thanks for listening to episode 17 of the Cows Report. A big thank you to David Harris and Matt Roan for joining us for the big interview, and to Dane Fischer, Jonathan Botros, and Josh McCowan for a thoughtful conversation on basketball sports supervision and leadership in today's game. You can find the Cows Report on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media at 80 Symposium on X, at the Cows Report on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can also visit us anytime at 80symposium.us for event details and more content from across the Cows community. Until next time, stay connected, stay curious, and keep leading the way in college athletics.